Good afternoon, Mr. Barker.
Good afternoon, Miss Osang.
How are you today?
I'm a little off today.
Off today.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the reasons why you're here today to see me. Your doctor has explained that you are a newly diagnosed diabetic,
Yes.
and I wanted to go over with you the signs and symptoms that you can experience when with hypoglycemia.
Okay. And what is hypoglycemia?
Hypoglycemia, Mr. Barker, is if you have had too little food to eat,
Okay.
or if you have taken too much of your insulin.
Okay.
And you mentioned that you exercise a lot. So if you
Yes,
have
I do.
exercised a lot and haven't eaten a lot, your blood sugars can run maybe in the lower figures of maybe 40, 50, anything
not good,
below
is it?
60, and that's certainly not good.
Okay.
So any figure that you get below 60 would be considered as hypoglycemia.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is just to go over some of the symptoms that you explained to me over the phone that you have been experiencing. And you said that, tell me a little bit of what you have been having.
I'm very shaky.
Yes.
I've been feeling really hungry lately, actually.
Okay.
And I mean, really drowsy, dizzy, all that kind of stuff.
Dizziness. And you mentioned something to me about your heart. What has been
Oh
happening?
yeah, another thing, my heart's been beating quite fast lately. I don't know why. It's just won't stop beating.
Very fast heartbeat. Those symptoms are typical symptoms of hypoglycemia. And you mentioned that you end up changing your handkerchief several times a day. What has been happening?
Well, I mean, constantly. I'm constantly always sweating and just dripping everywhere. It won't stop.
Lots of sweat,
Yeah.
profuse sweat. Are you having to change your shirts often because you're
Very.
sweating? Okay. And over the phone, you mentioned to me about your headaches. Tell me what has been happening. Explain that to me.
They hurt outrageously. I don't know why. It's just constantly just throbbing, and it hurts really bad.
Very bad. And I noticed that your leg is shaking, and also that your wound has not been healing.
You can even tell from like the outside of it. It's just
That wound is certainly not healing. And being a diabetic, you have your skin integrity is compromised. You have low fusion of the blood in that area, and so your wound will not heal. You are shaking a lot. Tell me a little bit more, explain a little bit more to me about the symptoms of shaking and what you have been experiencing.
really anxiety has been
You have a lot
really
of
getting to me, and the shaking. It's just constantly. It's always just never stopping.
Mr. Barker, I can't emphasize enough that these are definite classical symptoms of hypoglycemia. And you mentioned you have been having to hold on to the wall. What is happening with that?
Sometimes I just feel like I'm about to pass out, and just real drowsy and dizzy, and
Your
have to
vision?
hold on to something. My vision's really blurry too. I'm just not seeing quite well.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is just emphasize to you the importance of you taking care of these symptoms when they occur.
Okay.
Hypoglycemia, one of the main things that you can do is have 3 to 4 of these glucose tablets that your doctor has given you,
Okay.
or you can have 4 to 5 hard candies.
Okay.
Another good thing that you can have is maybe half a glass of orange juice, as you can see here, your
Can I have
orange
some
juice.
actually?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you. Excuse me for a moment.
Go ahead. That's okay, that's all right. And I would like you to test your blood sugars and record the readings that you have.
In here?
In the book that's
Okay.
exactly, that's the right book. That's for you to record your blood sugars. And most importantly, 30 minutes after having these symptoms, if you feel like you're doing a little bit better, it's going to be good for you to have half a sandwich.
Okay.
Make sure you have some type of meat in your sandwich.
Now, can I eat fast foods or?
I would not recommend fast
Okay,
foods,
fast
Mr.
foods.
Barker. And that literature, I have given you quite a bit of literature here. It goes over some of the foods that are suggested for you to eat.
Okay.
Remember, we had discussed this in our last class.
Okay.
So those are suggested foods that you can eat. And just to go back to when you're experiencing these low blood sugars,
Okay.
half of a sandwich and half a glass of skim milk would be highly recommended after you have tested your blood sugar and see that you're running low.
Okay.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Barker?
No, ma'am, you quite cleared that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I look forward to seeing you next week. We will be going over some more symptoms, but this will be of a hyperglycemia. So I'll be seeing you next week at the same time at 9 for your appointment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. Barker. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
I noticed that you brought your log with
Oh,
you.
yeah.
May I take a look at your
ahead.
blood sugars here? Wow. Your blood sugars have been running very high, Mr. Barker, and that's hyperglycemia.
Hyperglycemia?
Yes.
What is that?
Hyperglycemia is if you are not taking your medication as prescribed, your blood sugar is constantly running over, I would say, over the normal that the doctor has given you. He expects you to have maybe 160. That's your goal. And if you have been running higher than 160, 250 to 300, that's definitely a symptom of hyperglycemia. And I can see you are here in the 300s, 400s, 450. Tell me a little bit of the symptoms that you have been having, Mr. Barker.
Lately, I mean, a lot of food just looks really good to me. I've been really hungry lately.
Okay.
Very hungry. My skin has been very flaky and dry. And I mean, I put lotion on, but it still comes back during the day.
That is a symptom, Mr. Barker. You may not have recognized it, but that is a symptom of hyperglycemia.
Okay.
You said you have been hungry lately. What have you been doing? I noticed you walked in here earlier when I met you. You had a hamburger. What have you been eating a lot? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I've been eating quite a bit. I think a little bit too much lately, more than usual.
Yes.
So, and then I've been very, very sick afterwards. Just queasy in my stomach. And,
Nausea?
Yeah, very, very sick.
Okay.
Just constantly thinking I'm going to vomit.
Okay. That is another symptom, Mr. Barker. And I noticed that when we spoke earlier, you mentioned that you've been having to excuse yourself from conversations. Tell me about that.
It's kind of embarrassing, but yeah, I'm constantly back and forth to the restroom, and it doesn't stop. I don't know why.
So you have been urinating a lot, is that what you're saying?
I actually thought it was because of me drinking a lot. I've been drinking a lot of liquids, fluids, and stuff like that.
Drinking.
And I've been constantly going back and forth to the restroom.
So you've been drinking a lot of fluids, and of course you have been making several trips to the bathroom.
Yes, ma'am.
Typical symptoms of hyperglycemia.
Okay.
Okay. And you mentioned too you have been yawning and you just can't seem to understand. Tell me a little bit about that.
I'm very tired lately. It's been lazy, not wanting to get out of bed. But constantly just tired. Just feeling really lazy.
Well, what I'd like to go over with you this afternoon or this morning, I'm sorry, Mr. Barker, is what you need to do when you're experiencing these symptoms. The symptoms of the extreme thirst, drinking a lot, symptoms of going to the bathroom often, the dry skin that you explained to me, and eating, constantly eating. You said you're eating hamburgers, you're always eating, and the drowsiness that you have been having, that's another symptom, and the nausea. What I want you to know, when you experience these symptoms, that you need to take your blood sugar. Log your blood sugar levels as we have been doing.
Okay.
That's very important. And if after maybe 2 to 3 days you continuously have your blood sugars running these 300s and the 400s that you have had, it's very important that you call and speak to your. Well, Mr. Barker, thank you for coming in and thank you for listening so attentively. Do you have any questions that I can address for you today?
No, ma'am, you've quite clear for me.
Right, clear. So you know all the symptoms of hyperglycemia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 9.
Okay,
Okay.
Tuesday.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yes, sir?